people equate with the dream is some future ambition, but in my mind, the dream is about like,
that's a good point.
So I frequently answer the question when people say, "How are you?" I say, "I'm living the dream," which some people use as like very sarcastic.
It's a big evasion.
I'm slipping into the seventh circle of hell.
Oh gosh.
But I actually mean it. And when people like sort of question me about that, I say, "Well, aren't you living the dream?" They'll say, "I don't really know." Are you happy to be alive? Are you happy to be Catholic? Are you happy to be here doing whatever it is you're doing right now?
Yeah.
My students at BG, I'll say, "Are you happy to be getting a college education? Are you happy to be a husband and father? Are you happy to be doing this?" And so in my mind, living the dream is much more about a present reality, and I'm doing right now what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that will change in the future, and that hasn't been the same in the past.
Yeah, and the only way to get to the future is by doing that well in the present. That's a kind of a distinction we set up. You know, we focus too much on this future, this dream, or this, maybe God's calling me to this obscure thing. But sometimes then we neglect, well, the only way I get there, if that's where I'm supposed to be, is by being faithful in the present, being at peace with God in the present. And I can't sacrifice the present for the sake of some future that may not actually happen.
Amen. This actually, to me, ties into some real hangups I have with the present approach to the education system and even the expectations we have for work-life balance. We live for our jobs in this society. We live for the promotion. We live for some future ideal that really removes you from the here and now.
Yeah, when you equate the dream with some future career achievement, I think you really miss out a lot on the dream.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's another thing. Again, I'm sort of in a unique position as a priest where I don't really think of career in the same way that a lot of people do. But people ask me those kind of questions. They're like, "Well, what's your dream parish? What are your 5-year, 10-year plan? Where do you see yourself?" Or they'll say like, "You're working up to like be a bishop someday. Like you're working for the promotion." And so much of people's idea of the dream is about advancement to get out of where I am.
Yeah, as a discontentment with the present.
Right.
You know?
There's a great story I've heard. It's one of those fables, as you say.
Sure.
And it's about a man who,
As I say.
All the time.
I'm well known for just...
He always says that.
He's the fable guy.
that guy.
Fables. All right.
We all know that. This guy. Fabler.
Okay.
So he's sitting there on the dock, a guy, he's fishing. A man comes up to him and he says, "Well, you know, you could take those fish you've caught and take them into town and you could sell them and make a little bit of profit." So, "Well, what would I do with that?" "You could buy another fishing pole." "But what would I do with that?" "You could hire someone to fish. You could get more fish. You could buy a boat. Then you could buy 10 boats. And then you'd have a whole fleet of fish. And then what would I do with that?" "Well, you could sell it and then you'd be rich. You could live the rest of your life and do whatever you want." "Well, what would I do then?" And we said, "Well, you could fish all day." And he's currently fishing all day.
Right.
You know, you kind of like...
He's living the dream right now.
Right.
Yeah, you get so distracted with what comes next that you're not realizing, like, this great gift I have to spend this life and time with my family.
Yes.
With the people in my community, have great experiences of relationship and love with God and with others. And yet we're stuck pursuing this, you know, we're not, someday I'm going to have all this success and I'll have the freedom to do the things I could just do now.
How does this mesh with setting the need to, as husbands or fathers or managers of parishes or whatever situations we're in, to setting goals? Because there is something, there can be something very negative about having these goals that take us away from the presence. But on the other hand, you have to look ahead and make a plan and set a goal. So like, what's the distinction between those two scenarios?
Well, I'm gonna circle back to your initial question to be about what's my dream, because I think that's directly relevant to this question. Sure. I was in college as an opera major. Like I was studying opera to sing.
I didn't know that.
But anyways, I was living like a freaking heathen. Everything was about my glorification. I wanted to be another Josh Groban or, you know, Pavarotti or one of these guys. Like that was really my ideal. It was Nick's name in big letters. But when I had my major St. Paul situation in college and I really encountered the Lord and like went from Saul to Paul, I was slammed with this reality. Like, oh, wait a second. Everything I have been working towards is for the God of Nick. I need to slam the freaking brakes on that because that is not going to work. And I knew that if I didn't take radical measures, I would change my mind. I would lessen the gravity with which I was approaching this issue. And I literally dropped out of opera school almost immediately after falling back in love with Jesus. I needed to do that. Not everyone necessarily needs to do that, but all of my goals were oriented to the glorification of myself. And now, over the years, you know, I worked in parish and diocesan ministry for about a decade, and there's been a lot of healing that has happened. Immediately following that conversion, I had a hard time doing music again for a while because I didn't know how to do it without it being for me. And I reintroduced that whole thing by leading worship at the Veritas group on campus and stuff. And that was like a real healing journey. And throughout my years of ministry, I've been honing skills and developing passion for different ways of reaching out to people that all kind of culminated in God calling my wife and I to leave behind the security of what was there. We didn't know what it would look like. We didn't know about AWAKEN Catholic at the time. We didn't know that God had this vision that he wanted to create through us, that he would inspire us with. All we knew is we wanted to spread the gospel. We wanted to use these resources and stuff. And that was our goal. Our goal was we want to find a way to effectively minister to people, effectively bring messages to the online world and through events. That simple dream, our obedience to that, over time, the pieces just started to align. Like God was just moving these chess pieces around. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we have AWAKEN Catholic. A big part of it is what I said towards the beginning of this episode is the heart posture of submission to God's will has to be the first foundational thing for what you base your dreams on.